is up, everybody? My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. It's Rapper Day on Blackballed, and that always excites me. But today is a lot different. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes, and when I say sometimes, it's because there are few and far in between hip hop artists that I think have the ability to sort of make us aware of a very difficult political situation. When I say that, I'm thinking of people like Public Enemy or Immortal Technique and people cut from that type of cloth. And sometimes the subject matter can be so controversial that it can be very difficult to either A, get traction, or B, try to make it seem like the angle that you're coming at from this certain political issue is a legit angle. We have a lot of biases in the media. We have a lot of biases just among the general population. And but what I think is that when you combine lyricism and musicianship with a political bent that is honest and raw, you get pay dirt sometimes. And I think this is one of those situations. So I'm going to play the track a little bit later, but first I'd like to welcome to the show. He is a returning guest to the show. His name is Sage Francis. And also, please welcome to the show, OldBoy Rhymes. Gentlemen, how are you guys today?
Hey, James. Chilling.
Doing great.
The intro that I just gave, Sage, I'll start with you. Is that sort of like when you approach, and I'll play the track in a second, but when you approach a political song, I remember the last time I had you here, you actually made the point of saying that you're not a political rapper, and you kind of got boxed into that brand or whatever you want to call it back when you put out Makeshift Patriot. This time, pretty intentional. I think that you wanted to write something political and something hard hitting. What is it like? Describe like both the accolades and the blowback that you can experience for releasing a track like Master Cleanse.
Well, it's right now. I feel like it's more about being suppressed or throttled, and not really being able to gain the access or people's ears as frequently as I would enjoy with any other type of release. On a personal level, there's been some bad blood that's been created between me and people who don't quite agree with where we're coming from on the song, because they've been taught to believe that Israel is untouchable and they can be absolved of every crime that they commit, and they don't see what they're doing as crimes. They're just seeing it as a preservation of their people, and they think the land is owed to them. And I mean, that's where they're coming from, and it's certainly not my standpoint. It's not what I believe in, and I think it's So I've been dealing with that in the business world, though. It's really like kind of disheartening to see who just didn't support or show up or help boost the message or boost the signal, while completely understanding that it's very hard to get this type of music heard, or you're not getting it on playlists, and most media, like 99% of media, is not touching it at all. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from.
Did you have venue issues? Like did you have shows canceled, or at least not want to book you because of this track?
Not yet, although there's one questionable big event I had planned that was locked down in October, and then suddenly after the song came out, I was like, oh no, it's not happening now. So I don't know what happened. Sorry. So that does make me question if there's reason to believe that maybe this song and our message did not totally gel with the organizers or the people who own the venue. But nothing egregious just yet, which I'm happy to say. In fact, I'm getting a whole lot of show offers that I don't want to even take. It's like there's so much going on. You're in Canada. I haven't played there in a long time, and it's something just popped up where I might play for 20 full days throughout Canada, on the East Coast and West Coast of Canada. And that'll occupy a bulk of my summer. So I'm kind of not like, I wouldn't feel bad if it fell through, but I'm very grateful that the opportunity is there for me. So yeah, I mean,
I hope it doesn't fall through. I'd love to come and check you out. I've never seen you live before, but I will take the 4-hour drive to Toronto to come see Sage Francis. That won't be.
I think we'll go a little bit further north than Toronto.
I'll book you in Killaloe. You'll have like 40 people, Sage. I promise.
That's better than I get down south.
I'm gonna play the video after OldBoy. I'm gonna throw it to you in a second, but I think it's important that we establish the context at the start of this so that people aren't confused as to what we're talking about. The lyrics are so engaging. OldBoy, you like, I've never listen, and I mean this with total respect. I have never heard of you, and I listened to this track, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, where has this guy been? Like, your rhyme schemes, your patterns are dope, and because it has a message sewn into it, it just makes it all more impressive. Are you someone who's political by nature? Or do you think about the Middle East at all, or is it something that struck you and you just needed to get pen to pad?
Firstly, I would classify myself as a political rapper. I don't have any issue with that, but my life has been defined by exposure to international politics. So if I give you a bit of the context and backstory, I'm American, but my family's been in and out of the United States since 1960. My father moved by boat when he was a baby to Malaysia. He grew up in Malaysia, then he grew up in Singapore. I was born in Alaska. I moved to Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim population on the planet. Spent a big chunk of my upbringing in Indonesia, exposed to the cultures. I've had friends of literally every religion, every culture, every faith. And, I've lived through social upheaval. I've lived through revolution. I was evacuated in 1998 during the overthrow of Suharto. And my mom's from London. My wife was born and adopted from the Philippines. I've seen and experienced a lot of things. So I infuse a lot of that into my rhymes and into the topics I address. Obviously, I also rap about personal things, and from time to time, I like to do a track where I'm just flexing. But at the end of the day, I've been in and around the shaping of cultures and the shaping and emerging of democracies like in Indonesia. And that's why I like to address such topics. So this was actually my first professional track. And to do that and release it with somebody who I grew up looking up to and who I grew up listening to, who is Sage Francis, I couldn't be more grateful to do it on such an important topic.
At first, and I don't mean, this is an aside, and I'm sorry, but when I first saw you, I was like, that guy from the 50 Cent series, Ghost, is a rapper? Like, I don't know if you guys remember. I don't know if you remember who that is, but like, I was like, holy shit, this is to me, Tommy. Like, this is awesome. But no, the track is so good. So I'm going to play the track now, because I think, again, I want to establish the context so that listeners and viewers can be like, okay, that's what they're talking about. So this is Master Cleanse by OldBoy Rhymes and Sage Francis. So we'll be back as soon as the video's over.
Hey, this is the lost earth. People's heads are down, but they're pointing up like it's God's turf. A synagogue, a mosque, a black rock, or a pop church. Playing Christian rock in a concert where the left wing like Madonna skirts or the right wing like the John Birch. A holy man quotes proverbs while they toss dirt on a toddler in a casket that he's wrapped in like a bratwurst. Real monsters where the shots burst from militiamen in the result merch. Where the helicopters sound like reconnaissance work. Where the citizens stop as they're frisking their pockets. A kid who's just out on a job search. Where doctors got post-traumatic stress disorder cause all gory stuff that they saw hurts. Where the people are stuck and the demons are mucking. They're sagging their pieces and trees and the stuff. And babies are dying like clockwork. I'm having lucid dreams of gruesome scenes. Things that human beings do when we become too extreme. Pursue our prey like Wolverines. We root for teens, but some see troops as a means to an end. They salute the Marines while funding the Mujahideen. Funding coups for a new regime. Puppets, we move on strings. But then there's blowback, collateral damage you see on your news feed. And we choose to read only one side of the narrative. Screaming through computer screens. Zoom meetings where the truth is reduced to a meme. Lunacy, we can't find unity. Instead I'm losing sleep. Watching refugee encampment tents turn to bloodbaths of punctured abdomens, gashed skin and fractured limbs. Or weapon manufacturers are cashing in. Flags of neo-fascist men flap in the wind. Back in Washington, fat-o conservative chicken hawks act masculine and they act offended like I'm a bigot for even questioning or asking them if hate is a communicable pathogen passed to them. Javelin missiles and Apaches blasting. This is the psychology of a master cleanse.
How many become unified, then becomes enough. I see the whole, look on my highlight, but the terrain's so rough. Loosen up an ego when we should have given up. Your kingdom failed you, your king failed you. To loosen your grip, the fear of unknown, the fear of being seen. I guess it's easy to deflect and revise the history. Hold the white flag, give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in. Give me something to
How can I watch all these kids get killed and not speak up? Along with healthcare workers and not speak up. Journalists upon journalists and not speak up. While so many mouthpieces seem to feel the need to keep shut. For what? Is that career suicide to you? Or just the comfortable but scared side of you? Who was thumping their Bible when Bethlehem got bombed on Christmas? Did y'all send your thoughts and prayers and whispers, hoping no one would really listen or hear it and then share their own opinions? Schools and hospitals get targeted. This ain't a difference of religion, nor is it anti-Semitism. Judaism is not a Zionist agenda. America funds Israel by the billions, upon billions. It's all good since they use that money to purchase our weapons and ammunition. If you always identify as the victim, I guess any form of resistance is an assault on your existence. Just remember how the won't someone think of the children contingent went dead silent amidst all the indiscriminate killing, the apartheid, the genocide, and open air prisons slaughtered civilians. Please spare us the whataboutisms. It's a 75-year negative feedback loop with an oppressed and an oppressor, a neck and a boot for a people who've been brutalized for so goddamn long. You gotta know deep down that shit is wrong.
Give me something to believe in. Give me something to
How many
believe
men of God are demigods in them synagogues or little mosques? Hypocritical Christians tending to the flock like chicken hawks squawk on CNN and Fox. How many kids pitch rocks against soldiers with Kalashnikovs? The planet is a tinderbox. Humanity just missed the plot. I'm not bound to the Twitter mob. Nah, my mind is clear. I'm rising to a higher tier, up above the primal fear. Wake up above the riot gear, up above the puppeteers who profiteer like financiers, above the little kids who died eyes wide as frightened ears. I'm up above the biosphere, here crying ultraviolet tears, looking at us fighting like tribes with spears on our tiny sphere. If you're like Werner von Braun, what's the consequence of murder? They don't take your life away just like some non-essential workers. I'm not talking about your server, I'm not talking flipping burgers. I'm talking about the hate like when the Christians fought the Berbers. We know some scars are ancient and they lead to dark places, like our hearts are hardened racist, snarling at the Star of David. And I know it's hard to say it, but I'll say it. Here's the question, who's in prison? Who's flexing with precision-guided weapons? You'll be witness 9/11, they monopolize deception. Go ask Julian Assange, his sunlight's a disinfectant. Washing bloody clothes and chloride, standing on the Lord's side. Let's turn them into animals like we anthropomorphize. Agag and warp drives, baby corpse with horse flies. Mordecai, fortify the king, protect your tribe. The New York Times, both sides report lies. For watching martyrs memorialized as we justify war crimes.
Give me something to believe in. Give me something to believe in.
What? So that was Master Clan. That it's hard to praise a track like that in the way that I want to. Even when I was nodding my head to it, I was like, "Is this disrespectful?" Because of the content. Like I was, you know what I mean. But it's such a dope track. By the way, the ending reminded me of the last episode of The Sopranos. Just like the way that it just kind of went black there. Everyone thought that's because Tony bought it at the end, but
Tony
Sage
doesn't die at the end of the series. You do.
Okay, that's way too deep for too deep of a pivot. But I hear you. Really, I didn't know that. Did that David Chase say that, or did you say that?
No, I said that. It's actually an upcoming song, but you just reminded me of that. No, I mean, nodding your head to the track. I mean, this is our job. You know, like this is what we do.
Yeah.
We're you know, we make music, we make songs. We want it to be as palatable as possible, but and not cheapen the message by having it be a head nodder, but a vehicle for the information. Same way Public Enemy did for me. You know, it's like,
yeah. So
all praise due to Alexander Brown on the production, because he just elevates it in so many ways with the crescendos and the breakdowns.
Have you worked with him? The beat, the drum or something reminded me of Escape Artist. I don't know why, but it just did.
Alias did Escape Artist, rest in
Okay.
peace. But I did work with him on a song called Grace, which was on the
Okay.
Copper Gone album. And recently, since the pandemic, we've done a lot of work with Alexander Brown. So I appeared on 2 songs on his album, Glow Kid, and he produced the whole Meter Maids album, which recently dropped, which I'm on. But so he's a
Yeah.
Baltimore dude, killing it.
He's extremely talented. So my first album is about to come out in a few months.
Yep.
My second album is already almost done. Alexander Brown produced it. The guy has a really compelling backstory, including working in Dr. Dre's studio for a couple of years. And he really deep dives. Like, he loved the message. He loved the content. He's got an amazing creative ear. And he put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making this a very, very cinematic type of beat.
More importantly, old boy, will
Yeah.
you condemn Hamas already? How come
Okay,
you haven't
okay,
condemned
hold on.
Hamas yet?
Before
Oh my
you
God,
answer-
condemn them!
Before you answer that, Spencer Rice, who is a very funny, very famous Canadian television star, he also happens to be a friend of mine. He's been on the show before. Now,
I know Spencer. I know Spencer's work. Shout out.
You know
to
Spenny,
Spencer
Kenny
Rice.
versus Spenny?
Yeah, Kenny versus
Yeah.
Spenny. Yes.
Okay, so listen, let me just I'm gonna be the intermediary here because sometimes typing misses the context of what the person is actually like, and I think that might be happening here. But Spencer Rice is Jewish. He was very pro-Israel when it first when this conflict first started.
I saw.
I just dropped my cord.
I saw.
And then
about it.
and then he put something out last week that basically and I commend this kind of thing because sometimes we make sometimes our emotions are what leads us, and then when we start to take a look at the big picture, we have a change of mind or we evolve on an issue, whatever you want to call it. And he very bravely, I thought, because this is a complex issue, came out and said, listen, I still support Israel and their right to exist. I'm paraphrasing. However, Benjamin Netanyahu has lost the plot, basically was what he was saying. Now he's in the chat asking me to ask you, and I am going to do that. And OldBoy, I'm going to direct it towards you. You've had a lot of, in your lifetime, as you just explained, you've had a lot of political experiences in various arenas just by being either a citizen or a spectator or whatever. What when you make a track like this, do you feel ever a sense of responsibility not to make everything an equivalent, because that doesn't even make sense to me. I hate it when people say false equivalencies because it's like you don't have to assign a certain percentage of blame to either side. It really doesn't have to be like that. But is there a part of you that is just like, holy shit, Hamas, what the fuck? What was that? Why would you do that? Like, what is your sense and what is your take on the Hamas side of this conflict?
Firstly, when people ask questions like that, it seems like they've spent countless hours watching Piers Morgan, who likes to start every single interview with that fucking question. It's a gotcha question. Now, there is no black and white in this scenario, right? And so not only did I live through revolutions and grow up around many, many millions of Muslims, I lived through terrorist attacks. I had friends die in terrorist attacks. I've been involved in the medical response to terrorist attacks. I've seen that side of extremism, right? What I will do is happily condemn Hamas and people who usurp power, but I will more importantly condemn the environment that gives rise to that extremism. What environment are those people living in that actually allows mad, ruthless, militant, power-hungry people to usurp power and use that to their own political ends? That's not to say everybody in and around them is evil, because life is not black and white like that. But people who want to ask these gotcha questions, they're looking for a quick, simple way to understand the world. And the world is complex and nuanced. I will very happily condemn Benjamin Netanyahu and an extreme right-wing government that is essentially enacting a political doctrine of supremacy. I'm very happy to do that as well. But most of the people who sit online and ask these questions, they have not actually been in and around the real carnage of militant Islam or militant Western militarism, right? There's a lot of sides to this. And at the end of the day, if you actually have a heart and you have a good head on your shoulders, what you're trying to achieve is commonality. You're trying to achieve peace. You're trying to achieve a planet that we can coexist on and do things that actually benefit humanity, rather than sit around pointing fingers and only wanting to understand our one tribal side of a perspective. And it really pisses me off when people want to engage on that basis. If you want to have a sincere conversation, then enter into a sincere conversation without a gotcha question like that.
Yeah,
so you may be a cool guy, but
I understand where you're coming from on that. And I just want to say again, as a person who is often misunderstood in the typing context versus the spoken context, and as a person that knows Spencer, I don't think it was meant as a gotcha. I think he was just being concise and typing. Just to let you know, I hear you though. I understand the Pierce Morgan methodology of sort of like creating an instant conflict with their guests is not something that I support. And I don't think Spencer, and I know Spencer wasn't trying to come off like that, but I can totally see why he thought that. Sage, how much does this conflict have to do with poverty? That's not a gotcha question. You're laughing.
I mean, how much does it have to do with poverty? I'm not
trying
really
to be
sure
concise.
That's where I would
That's all.
go with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me rephrase.
Let me just say it like this. If these or if the people living in Gaza weren't impoverished, or if they were given as much aid and weapons as Israel is given, maybe this conflict wouldn't happen, because they would both be toast. It just so happens that they are the underprivileged, they are the oppressed, and they're easy to take over bit by bit. Because Israel could do it in one day, there's no doubt about that. Israel could have taken it in one day, but that's when they lose everybody's faith in the world as a moral leader, or whatever they like to present themselves as, the most moral army in the world. I'm not really sure what the question was about, but
the question, what I mean by that is when we take a look at conflicts like this, you can make the same adjacent comparison or parallel to the United States and Iraq. Like where one side is very rich, high-tech weapons, and the other side is fairly ragtag. And so here's the most complex question that I can ask, and I'll throw it to both of you. Sage, you can go first. The idea that these cheap rockets that hardly ever landed and get swept up in Iron Dome defense systems could be counterattacked by smart bomb laser guided missiles that take out apartment complexes. I am very much sensitive to the idea that poverty plays a role in almost every conflict, because not that there's no excuse for the October 7th attack, because when you deliberately target civilians, or when you don't give a shit that civilians are killed when you target militants or terrorists, whatever you want to call them, I find both of those contexts to be really despicable. So when I talk about poverty, I'm talking about the ability to wage war, and what do people without an arsenal of high-tech weaponry do to defend themselves from an occupation? I don't know the answer to that, by the way. I'm just asking that question to you guys. So Sage, we'll start with you.
They create a terrorist group. They create a terrorist group to combat, because they don't have anything. They don't have any other way to go about it. I'm not, and I will condemn Hamas, but I will also say, if you're living in an occupied territory that's habitually being, there was more civilian killings by Israel in Gaza in 2023 before the October 7th attack. Like it was like they broke a record killing civilians by dropping bombs and doing various things like that. It was like people were saying that Hamas broke a ceasefire, and there was really no ceasefire on Israel army's part. It was, or military's part. So I can understand how a country of people who through hundreds of years or 100 years would have to figure out ways to protect themselves or act out in anger and do things not in a wise way. I mean, I'm not I don't think it was smart for them to do what they did, but maybe this was their way of gaining attention that they thought was necessary from a world that continually ignores their problems.
Old boy.
So, as a point in general, does poverty lay fertile ground for militancy? Of course, and even in the West. Look at the dissolution of the middle class in the United States, right? I think that is a problem to where our country is headed. We become more warlike. There's more domestic violence and issues. So it cuts across, it's transnational, right? That's not just a Muslim phenomenon. But at the same time, I would say, some of the kindest, most peaceful, most accepting and tolerable people I've ever met in my entire life were vast swaths of impoverished Muslims. So it's not just because you're poor or that you're religious that necessarily lays these grounds. There's a lot of aspects to that context. And as Sage just said, if you're living in an environment where a foreign power that has far more weapons, far more backing, far more technology, has the ability to control who comes in and out of your country, switch off the electricity, control the food supplies, manage and regulate your immigration, essentially create an information barricade around your nation, and then you add poverty into it, there's not much left else there for young men to do except kind of join this pipeline of anger and hostility, and some of which is really justified. So poverty is important, but it's one element, right?
There was one part of the video where the words on the screen, and I don't know where it came from, but it said, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I feel like people, especially in today's day and age, like politically, a lot of people are politically illiterate, and so they don't really understand even what Zionism means. They don't understand that. I always like to separate the leaders, like Benjamin Netanyahu. I know a lot of Jewish people. They're great people. They're the ones that I know are funny and great conversationalists and generous and all that kind of stuff. And you can have conversations with them about Zionism and anti-Semitism and the differences. But when the media blankets this idea, like the new anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism, how frustrating is that when you're trying to just sort of like send a sort of message to help explain a conflict maybe to people that don't really get it? Like, I don't know a lot of hip hop heads that are really into this shit, but like, there are a few obviously. But how frustrating is that, Sage, to sort of take a political message that has nothing to do with a race of people and have it sort of amalgamated together in an unwarranted way?
It's very frustrating because when you speak on it, I think what people are apt to automatically believe is if something's anti-Semitic, if they're told something's anti-Semitic, they just accept it as that, because we've long learned that, the Jews were put through hell for so long. And if something's anti-Semitic, we must, fuck that, get rid of that. No, can't support that. And then you lose the ability to have nuance. And I think Zionists bank on that. They bank on the confusion of what the difference is between Judaism and Zionism. And like I was saying earlier, when an oppressed people are fucked with long enough, they're going to become militant. And Zionism, I think, is the militant response to how much shit they had to put up with. And
wait, can you just and this isn't a gotcha question, because I always know what my strengths are and what my weaknesses are. I don't know if I could aptly define Zionism if someone asked me to, and I was just wondering if either of you can.
I think Chris probably has that well.
Okay, Chris, old boy.
I'm certainly not a scholar, right? But essentially a political philosophy that was started out in the 1800s, and you had the rise of nationalism sweeping throughout Europe, and it was founded by a guy named Herschel, and it was a political doctrine of creating a homeland for the Jewish people after, yes, a lot of the horrific things that had taken place in the past. But it's a nation state political philosophy. It is not the religion. And if you can tell, I'm a bit of a passionate person in general on the topic, and what triggers me in general in life, it doesn't matter if you're left or right, is when you use certain terms. Like back when Sage made Makeshift Patriot, If you question the war on terror and the tactics, you're unpatriotic. If you're a resistance fighter, you're an insurgent. If you question Big Pharma, you're anti-vaxxer. If you question Epstein's death, you're a conspiracy theorist. My bias is I identify with Israelis obviously more than Palestinians. I'm Western, regardless of how I grew up. I have many Israeli friends. I was even attacked when I was 18 years old by a group of Muslim Indonesians. Me and my Israeli friend had the shit beat out of us. We had to run for our lives after the US invaded Iraq. So I identify on a very superficial level kind of with Israeli people. I have no problem with Israelis. What I have a problem with is a power dynamic and the ability to kind of push aside dissenting opinion by calling people bigots and racists. The same people on the right who hate when people on the left do that are the same ones now doing it. And it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, that's a common thing nowadays, is to just be brushed aside as a bigot. And I always thought, like, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. So I often have the added benefit of being able to see kind of like the on either side of any religious debate, because I don't have a dog in that fight. And I often feel that way about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I don't know how educated one has to be in order to like give a thoughtful opinion about it. But once they start going back to like, well, we've been here since, whatever it is, 5,000 BC, 2000 BC, whatever it happens to be. And I'm always sitting there thinking, well, do you make the same argument for indigenous groups in North America?
Exactly.
And people get angry for creating that parallel. And it's like, I didn't create that parallel. You just said that. You just
I say it.
Gave yourself the indigenous cred for why you like have that piece of land. And I'm asking you, well, if that's the benchmark, do you support indigenous groups sort of just taking over America or whatever the fuck? And they always look at you like, well, that's not the same at all. And it's like, actually, it's exactly the same.
It's not even exactly the same. I feel like indigenous people in America have more claim to the land than they do.
It could be. Have you got even? I want to know about the and not for any salacious reasons, but if you're an artist and you put out work like this, you want to evoke emotion, you want to educate, but there is a silver lining to the criticism, because if you can take that criticism, the energy behind it, and then throw it back in more work or more creativity, then there's always a positive. But I want to know what kind of blowback you've received specifically. Sage, go ahead.
Oh, I thought we already answered that question. I mean, the blowback I received has been minimal. It's really just been ideological differences with friends or trolls. Blocking them on the socials is not a problem.
Let me follow that up then, because I did ask that sort of already, and I just sort of rephrased it. Has anyone stopped and made you think? Like, oh, that's a really good point that I didn't think of or I didn't put in the song. I'm just wondering.
No. One person did ask me not to use a certain part in the song, so I took it out, and I kind of regret it now.
Can I ask what that part was, if you regret it?
Yeah, I mean, I was very careful about what I did in that song. I'm kind of like, I'm a featured guest on the song. It's OldBoy's song. He does the 2 full verses, and I kind of like occupy the middle territory. And as I've said in other places, I'm kind of giving some of the bullet points and trying to make it more accessible to a person who is not well read on any of this stuff. And I admittedly had to do a deep dive on the history of Zionism and on Palestine. And before I even wrote my short verse, some things I just had to refresh, because it's like, that's why I don't like to call myself a political rapper. I'm not going to hop on every single world conflict as if I'm up on all these matters and I truly understand the geopolitics of it all. I do not. That is not my life. And I feel like some people fake it, and the people who have faked it for so long, you don't see them making these songs because they really don't know how to approach it.
It's kind of strange, isn't it? Because and I don't mean this in any bad way, because I sort of feel this way too. It's strangely easier, maybe not strangely, it's just easier to feel a sort of sympathy for the Palestinians and the I feel like it's an open air prison, Gaza. I don't feel like when the Israelis claim that they left Gaza that they really left. They left it and then they boxed it in, right? And
Right.
they have phrases like "mow the lawn," which is the occasional, bombardment or deprivation of medical supplies and food aid and things like that into Gaza. It it's a very open and shut case when you look at it thoroughly from a political standpoint, but it's always made to feel like it is bigotry, and it seems that if the UN passes resolutions, that the entire United Nations becomes a palace of bigots. And to talk about this the way that we are right now, I'm sure there's people right now being like bigots. Is there a way to get past that? Like, is it just the alliance with the United States, old boy? Is it what? I mean, give me your take on why it's so difficult to just frame it the way it seems, likely that everyone should be able to frame it. What's going on here?
Well, separating Zionism and Judaism, I still want to go back to what you're talking about, and this will answer the question around religion. So the reason my father took a boat and grew up in Malaysia in 1960 is because my grandfather was a missionary, and he had a PhD in theology. And before he passed away, I spent a lot of time discussing religion and religions with him. And believe it or not, he was essentially an agnostic, borderline atheist minister. He believed in the power of religion to create social guidelines, social norms, all of this. And the point I'm getting to is I've had a very open mind for a long time. I believe there's a purpose in the universe, but I believe a lot of these religions and our ideology and tribal mindset attached to them can divide us. Now, conservative Christians in the United States, they believe, and I have many of them in my family, they believe Jews are God's chosen people, right? And this is the same fraction of the United States that was very heavily militant during the War on Terror. And they identify with this small patch of land because their religion and their stories and what they've been told their entire life is these are God's chosen people. So you take that and you combine it with geopolitics of our military industrial complex, of using Israel as a launching pad for enforcing and imposing essentially our will in the region, and you have what you have. Whereas 95% of the planet are actually condemning what's going on. You think Amnesty International is full of a bunch of bigots? You think the United Nations tops to bottom is full of bigots? Most of the people outside of this US kind of led doctrine, a US backed doctrine, most people condemn what's going on. It's not even controversial. It's just because we control the narrative that it seems controversial.
It's interesting what you just said too, because the evangelicals also think that if those chosen people, when Christ comes back, doesn't immediately convert to Christianity, that they're not going to be swept up in the rapture, right? Like, which is really interesting. They make odd bedfellows, right? Because they're allies in a sense, but when you start to look under the hood of their spirituality, they are not allies, right? Like they're like. They have a common enemy, but when the shit hits the fan and when Jesus, I don't know, whatever, comes down in his robe and tells people to come back up with him, whatever that is, if you don't convert, then you're not going to do it. I'm going to ask a personal question because we all probably have parents and relatives that are old school and they never like to answer two questions. What are your religious beliefs and who did you vote for? So I'm just going to ask. I'll start with you, Sage. Do you have any religious beliefs? Are you comfortable sharing what they happen to be?
Well, I am not a Christian. I am not a Muslim. I am not Jewish. I'm not Hindu. I am a human person. I believe in humanity, and I hope the best for humanity, even though I am not a Satanist either.
But do you believe? Are you agnostic, or do you like maybe there's something out there? Like what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I hate the label. I just hate the label atheist or agnostic. It's just like I feel it pins me to something I'm not sure I really want to have on me. Yeah. So I have no dog in this fight. So I'm not inherently rooting for one side or over the other due to any spiritual beliefs or religious beliefs. I would like to think I am a humanist. That is one label I'm fine with adopting as a label. And what I see happening as we talk and talk and talk and talk, these kids are continuing to get murdered and maimed. Food can't get through, medical care can't get through. We're seeing it live streamed. We can pontificate all we want about this and that. But the fact of the matter is, you can call me an anti-Semite because I believe this shit is fucked up. It's like, I don't care about these words anymore. I would like for the killing to stop. And I wish we could just make that happen. And the only way I know how to do that is to have these kind of conversations, make these kind of songs, and make as much sense to the people who don't have all the time in the world to dissect it all themselves. So they're getting all the information from corporate news media, which their agenda really is on Israel's side. It's amazing when you look at it. I graduated with a degree in journalism. That's why it was so easy for me to kind of like wrap up Makeshift Patriot the way I did so soon after 9/11, watching the demise of journalism live on TV. And now we get this new kind of journalism, raw, from like live streamed videos of exactly what's happening in the moment every day. And it doesn't come through any particular filter, really, so that is just an amazing new world we're living in as far as how we're able to access information, but not everyone's getting that. So we become certain gatekeepers of information, but more important than being a gatekeeper is being the people who hopefully make more sense of it to those who are really interested in having a better world or making a conflict stop. Not that we have
Chris,
the
you don't have to
answers,
answer that either, but sorry. I just want, and by the way, just to reiterate, the reason why I asked is just because I want to know where you're coming from in this life. Like I have no follow up, right? Like I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, like Sage, I try to avoid labels.
Yeah.
The only label I'll take is Strange Famous. But in terms of religion, as Sage said, probably even more extreme because of the way I grew up. I literally have friends of every single faith. Now, what people do,
your shade of skin color is Alaskan white. Go on.
I actually grew up with the nickname Powder and Old Man Winters. So yes, it's nice. Something I can't get away from. Yeah. But nonetheless, when people don't have a religion yet they feel a certain way about the universe, the label they put on themselves is often spiritual. So I almost cringe even when I say I'm spiritual. What I am is I do believe that there's greater purpose in the universe. I believe that the way we used to perceive and structure our thoughts around that is very outdated. We have modern science. We have ways to probe the depths of the universe and try to understand human consciousness. We have all of these things that don't necessarily need to rely on ancient Abrahamic religions that worked for us 2,000 years ago when we didn't have police and we didn't have central infrastructure to govern our society. And that's where they really served their purpose. When there was no police, you needed a common set of rules so everybody could live in some sort of basic level of harmony. We're well beyond that. And I think the universe is mysterious. And I've seen enough things in my life that don't make sense statistically, how things have happened and connected, that I do believe there is greater purpose in life. What that is, I don't necessarily know, but I'm open-minded like Sage. Like I'm always trying to learn and understand and figure that out.
I've noticed that death tolls don't matter more to religious people than non-believers. And what I mean by that is that, you could see the Mujahideen or Al-Qaeda not give a shit about 3,000 people killed on 9/11. And at the same time, the evangelicals that were running the White House didn't really give a shit about the 500,000 or whatever Iraqis that were killed. And then I find that people that don't believe always look at death tolls, and I'm looking at 30,000 people killed, half of them women and children. And I'm very bad at math, but all of a sudden I'm like counting, and I think death tolls matter. What is it about the modern warfare machine versus the ragtag army? What is it about that situation where 30,000 dead civilians doesn't seem to matter? Like what what is happening there? Am I off base in thinking, Sage, that it's like, you know, it's either warranted? Is it political? Is it religious? Like, what's happening?
I honestly believe it's because they're brown people. I honestly believe it's because they're Muslim. We've been predisposed to not care about Muslim deaths. Not even with the Iraq War. Before that, Islamophobia has kicked into full gear as of late, only rivaled by what I witnessed after 9/11. And I would say that most Americans...
But anti-Semitism is on the rise too, though. Like real anti-Semitism, not the fake kind, but the real kind, you know?
Real and fake. I mean, if people hear what... if you're saying... If they're... I don't know. If the figures or the statistics include anti-Zionist statements as being anti-Semitic, yeah. If people are saying that Israel should stop what they're doing, that's anti-Semitic because they think, oh, they can't protect their own land, or they don't have a right to a country. Like, it's just a lot of confusion right now about all that. But I don't see any confusion about people truly not giving a fuck about the people of Palestine or Gaza in general, and saying just flatten the whole thing, just kill them all, get it over with. We're so sick of hearing about this, blah blah blah. You know, it's just, there's no way it can stop. It's always going to go on, whatever. It's like they're savages. We've been taught really to think that Israel is the more sophisticated and more human. Like, people in Gaza, they're subhuman. They're bugs.
More civilized. I've heard a lot of that lately.
Yeah,
like,
they're more civilized. Yeah. So that's what I'm seeing. It's not very hidden. It's very out in the open. I feel like we could look back on this in 20 years and cringe and say, wow, you know, I hope more people are able to come around and the tides can turn sooner than later. But what I'm seeing day to day on the news and in the comments and online is just like, it's suspect language. And I try to, I'm always hyper aware of that stuff because I am a white rapper in a black music field. You know, it's like what drew me into hip hop was black anger in America. And why? I'm not black. I wasn't suffering from those social circumstances, but
even Chuck D called it the CNN for black people, right? Like,
which is very outdated now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That kind of aged like milk, but at the time it's true.
Yeah. Chris, because you have been in various situations that can be described as political upheaval or just political in general, Indonesia being Henry Kissinger's old stomping grounds in a certain way, do death tolls matter to you? And if so, why?
I find it interesting that you knew that. Not many people know Henry Kissinger used to sit on the board of Freeport. Freeport, a massive gold and copper mining company that sits out in Papua. My brother and I were talking about it yesterday. If you want any type of real world parallel to the movie Avatar, go look up Freeport. It's the most complex mining operation in the world, sitting in pristine rainforest. And the amount of strategic interest that has to the US government and it's really interesting. There is obvious racism and dismissing of a people that appear to be less developed, but I think it's even more callous than that. I think US foreign policy in general often uses humanitarian excuses when we go and do something militarily. So we pick and choose when it suits our agenda. Oh, look at the savage Saddam Hussein, and him and his sons are just torturous monsters. We got to get in there. Or different countries in Africa where we've done the same thing. But when it doesn't suit the agenda, death silence. You can have an outbreak of salmonella in the United States with a carton of eggs, 2 kids die, and the entire country freaks out, and nobody cares when you have 30,000 people, many of whom are children, being killed indiscriminately. So it's where the narrative leads us. And
you could tell from the beginning, people back in November were calling a ceasefire anti-Semitic. I remember mainstream people. You guys had Alan Dershowitz in your video. I don't think him and what's that other guy's name? Bo Teach. What's that guy's name? The rabbi.
Shmuley.
Those two gentlemen are just they're so nauseating to listen to because
Yes.
they're mouthpieces, and I get it. You have a side, but the way that they formulate their argument is just like really, like if you like Dershowitz always says, if you and this is a guy that was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, so let's not, and O.J. Simpson is one of his lawyers, but if you're sitting there and your main point is, well, if you're going to criticize Israel and at the same time you don't randomly criticize some other Middle Eastern country, then you're an anti-Semite. It's just like, what the fuck? Like I've never even heard of that concept before, where if you criticize, the United States or Saudi Arabia or China, that you have to also criticize, Qatar and fucking Japan and someone else. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. And it makes me like when they were saying that Hamas is responsible. Okay, first of all, Hamas was responsible for all of the deaths. I think it was 1,100 or whatever it was on October 7th. That just seemed like a nightmare. Like, it's like going to like Six Flags and getting, everyone getting blasted and then people in their homes. And that just seemed like a nightmare. Yeah. Since then, the 15,000 women and children that have been killed, not to mention the other 15,000 men, are like, oh, that's also Hamas's fault. It's like, what? Like every death is like, how convenient is that? Where every single death is one organization's fault. Human shields, they fire from hospitals. And it's like, they are literally in a shoebox, and you are sending laser-guided missiles into a shoebox. Like, what do you expect to happen? Like, it just...
Do you expect these guys to stand out in an open field and, like, march to a beating drum just so you can come in and drone strike them? Where the fuck else are they going to post up?
What was that line in Braveheart? I'm going to go pick a fight. Just, like, it's not going to work that way. So... I don't even know where to go with this conversation anymore, because it's just on the surface, it just seems so wrong. Like,
look, Israel has killed more of the Israeli hostages than they've saved at this point.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that they don't care about the hostages. This is not what it's about.
And the interesting thing about that, Sage, what you just said, I'm sorry to cut you off, but is that there used to be a point that very few Israeli military analysts and spokespeople could answer, which is, if you knew that Israelis were hidden in the building that Hamas is firing rockets from, would you blow it up? And oftentimes they would just dither. And now it's like, we know the answer. I think they fucking would. Like, and it's just, there is a lack of fundamental respect for human life when you know your laser-guided missile is going to kill 30 people as well as the 5 people you're trying to kill. Like, that to me, is we're too high tech when it comes to war. Like, the rich nations, with their drones and everything, like it's too much. You can't call it a fight anymore. And then you blame the side that is getting killed. I don't know. I'm not usually passionate like this about this topic, but you guys really kind of, made me
you
feel like
see, you see Kamala Harris come out 2 days ago. I think it's 2 days ago now. Calling for a ceasefire and then walking it back and then patting herself on the back like she stood up and did something that was taking a huge risk and a huge gamble, when they're only doing it now because it's really impacting Joe Biden's base and the likelihood of him actually winning. Whereas where were they 4 weeks ago? Where were they 5 weeks ago? They don't actually care. And, I did an internship at the, go ahead.
No, you finish.
I was just going to say, another political experience. I used to live in San Francisco, and I did an internship when I was in college at the City Hall of San Francisco for one of the district supervisors. Kamala Harris was working there at that time. Gavin Newsom was right down the hallway. And I went into that internship so excited that I would get to experience the inner workings of our brilliant government. And I was woefully disappointed when I got in there and I realized most of the people making policy decisions, even on like a city level, like San Francisco, where Kamala Harris was working, they're not that intelligent. So the people running the show and dictating these terms, they're not some Machiavellian like Illuminati. Most of them are actually a bunch of fucking morons.
And unlike everyone on this panel, they have great hair, right? Like, that's really all it is.
I'm going to grow my fro out. I actually have a head of hair, but I shave it.
It's all about the looks.
Ahead,
and that's why they'll drop a little bit of food on Gaza as a a propaganda campaign to say, look, we care. Meanwhile, continually supplying weapons to Israel to bomb the shit out of people.
How much does how much does international economics play in this? Like the weapons manufacturers, the United States, it's so funny listening to them sometimes, and I'm going to put air quotes here, condemn Israel for their heavy-handedness, because it's always like, oh, we hope Israel is a lot more careful with the laser-guided mechanisms and bombs that we sold to them or sent them in as aid. And I'm wondering, because we never hear from the president of a weapons manufacturing company.
Right.
Should we be demanding that kind of feedback from weapons manufacturers, Sage?
What, in this great capitalist society? They're just supplying the demand. No.
Remember when that was called war profiteering?
Yeah. Well, I live kind of next to Raytheon. I'll stop by and ask what's going on. See if I can talk to the guy in charge. Yeah. They let me in there once as a model.
I'm sorry.
This is a weird story.
Model.
Never mind. That's
no. Now you have to finish that story now.
No, I can't right now.
Were you like a Scud missile? Is that kind of like what's?
I shouldn't have opened that can of worms because I really do want to explain it sometime, but it's a lot.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left. To circle back to the track. I want to know, are you worried about performing it live? So I'm going to ask you a general random question that I just thought of right now.
OldBoy's not really performing too much. We hope that can be a possibility at some point. I currently do have a lot of shows planned, and I'm wondering how I could even perform it. It would be weird without OldBoy or Rituals of Mine on the song. I might do my part a cappella or something, just as just to bring it live. But I'm wondering about that. I mean, my friend Brother Ali has been dropping the Free Palestine verbiage at his shows, and he's definitely gotten some blowback for it. But again, I don't give a fuck. I've never given a fuck. I will always say what I think and what I believe in. I don't want it to derail my tours. I don't want it to put me in danger, but
you're not going to lose an Adidas contract, for example.
Right. And everything we've done is with fucking kitty gloves. I'm tired of pretending that we couldn't have gone harder on that, just with punches and this is really fucked up. We're handling it with kitty gloves so that the regular person can be not feel attacked because maybe they don't believe what we believe in, but maybe they'll give us a chance. Maybe they'll hear what we have to say and look more into it. And we have had those people reach out to us and say, yo, thank you. I'd never really thought much about this at all. And you gave me an opportunity to look into it more. And it's really, I can't believe what's going on. I'm going to tell my friends about it or whatever. Same thing happened with my grandmother. It's it's reaching people. I understand that, even though I'm shouting right now and I'm very aggressive in my speech, I understand that can make people shy away. It's not the way to do it all the time. Yeah. It's got its purpose when you do it, but you got to pick your spots, right? Right at this point didn't feel like that was a spot. It's starting to feel like more of the spot right now. Many
James, I want to give Sage his credit. So I've got an album that's about to come out in a few months, and it features a huge number of my idols, these MCs I grew up listening to. It's a really stacked.
Can I hear that list? Because I'm a diehard hip hop head. Are you allowed to? Is it top secret?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah, we haven't announced anything officially, but OldBoy, spit it.
Yeah, please.
Brother Ali, Zion I, Locksmith, Micah 9, Mr. Liff, Sage Francis, Tom Thumb, who's a legendary beatboxer, one of the top 3 of all time. Sage, I'm missing. There's about 18. You have Gel from Anticon, Deuce Eclipse, a bunch of guys from our label. Mokes, DJ Buddy Peace, Black Lick, Runt from Driving Scientists, and I know I'm missing probably 2 or 3 others. So
Old boy,
the
you know how
point-
you have your whole life to do your first album, and your sophomore's coming out on the heels of your first. Did you split your lifetime work into 2 albums, or did you do a lot of new shit between 1 and 2? Like, I'm just wondering. Just curious.
Sage can tell you, I think I kind of annoy some people because I like to write, I like to rap, I put out content constantly. Like, I want beats every single day. And so the time it takes from when I record something to actually getting it out to people is different than I anticipated because I haven't been in the industry. So rather than sit around twiddling my thumbs, I immediately asked Sage, come on, like, who else is going to feed me beats? So he connected me with Alexander Brown. We've already recorded the second album. And but what I wanted to mention was that I've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of these people and these artists I grew up listening to. And, you know, you can be disappointed, they say, when you meet your heroes. And Sage was one of these dudes that I was living over in a country that had dial-up internet. It would take me 3 days to download a single MP3 from Napster, and we'd be super stoked when you'd get it. And to actually interact with Sage and to know that he truly is the guy who doesn't give a fuck. He really, truly is the guy who will say what he thinks. That's the type of artist I've always aspired to be and been inspired by. And so Sage definitely should get his fucking credit for even willing to push this track and to get on it with me, you know? And not many artists, I've been disappointed how many artists have actually stepped back and gone silent on an issue when they were a air quote political rapper in the past.
Yeah. You know what's
the
interesting?
pleasure
is
was all mine, my G. Yeah, for sure.
I think that's great. There's a, and I love that, the dial-up Napster thing, because it just reminds me of people in, I don't know how old you are, but like Sage, you and I are pretty much the same age. I'm 47, but the growing up in Canada to listen to hip hop, it wasn't anywhere. Like, I had to put tinfoil on the end of my fucking antenna to get the college radio hip hop show on Saturdays in order to, so that's your Napster dial-up experience, right? Yeah.
Yep. Same exact thing. Saturday night, 12 to 1 a.m. is the only time you get hip hop on a Boston College radio station. I had to put, like finagle my antenna on the boombox in all different types of ways. Still,
people have no idea.
But
like that was love back then. Now it's almost like maybe I'm over romanticizing, but there's always like a part of me that's like, if you put tinfoil on your antenna just to listen to a genre of music for an hour a week, once a week, I mean, you love that shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's not much. Now I go to YouTube, I could get anything I want. It doesn't mean I love anything. It just means I have access. But to have dial-up and Napster, I have no idea what that experience would even be like. To be honest with you, I didn't have both those. I didn't have both those at the same time. So
this is third world developing internet speed. It's seriously like 3-4 days to download a 3 megabyte MP3, and sometimes back then people would mislabel the track. So you're so stoked to get it, you download it, and it's like Hanson or some shit.
That's awful.
Well, old boy, in your defense, you live in a basket, it looks like. So, I mean, you got to take what you can get.
It's an Airbnb. This is the background.
It actually looks kind of dope. I was just playing. Sage Francis, Old Boy Rhymes. The track is called Master Cleanse. What's your album called, Old Boy?
It's called The Sane Asylum. So not Insane Asylum, The Sane Asylum. And the concept behind that, you'll see when the cover art comes out. My brother's an amazing artist. He painted the cover during lockdown, and it's infused with a lot of dope imagery of a guy losing his mind and the partisanship that we see in the West. And there's a lot of motifs in there, and that drives the theme of the album. Essentially, the concept being in an insane world where we can't come to agreement on anything, and we're triggered by everything, and nobody wants to have a dialogue in the middle. We brought all of these spitters, all of these legendary, iconic, dope artists onto one album to be sane spitters in an insane world. And that was essentially.
Well, listen, as
it's produced entirely by Mopes as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mopes, but
I am. And as a head, let me tell you, like, your cadence, your patterns, your schemes, you're dope, dude. Like, I can't wait to cop this album, and I hope to have you back. And Sage, you have shows coming up in June. Do you have anything else coming out, or what? Give me your show list so that people know. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay.
Or just off the top of your head, whatever.
On Cinco de Mayo, I'm playing with Chesky in Hamden, Connecticut. It's a benefit show for a friend of his. Then June 8th, we're playing Rhode Island It's going to be kind of a mini Strange Famous gathering. The people are coming from all over for it. So and I'm going to be playing with my brother for the very first time. My brother is he's a virtuoso on the guitar, and so he'll back me up with acoustic guitar, and we'll do that for the very first time. That's exciting for me. So after that, it's July 8th. We're playing in Colorado Springs, Denver. Also in the summer, we'll be playing in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm playing Rhymefest LA, and then I'm playing San Diego, and then this Canada stuff I'm just waiting for it to get finalized, but it's going to be, I think, 10 dates. So that's going to be the first time I've toured in so long. I don't want to tour, but I do want the money, so I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely check out those shows. Sage Francis, OldBoy Rhymes. Again, the track is called Master Cleanse. I'll put it in the description when I post this onto Spotify. But guys, I really appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Sage Francis. OldBoy, it's really nice meeting you, man. You're like I said, your rhymes are dope. I can't wait to cop the album. And thank you guys for a really thought-provoking track. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night, guys.
Thanks, Chase. Peace.
Peace, man. Yeah, that was dope. Listen, I hope there's not going to be any blowback from that. There was nothing like untoward towards Israelis or Jewish people or anything in that. But you have to call it like you see it. And there is a definite disproportion between capabilities between one side and the other. Is what happened on October 7th more evil than the indiscriminate bombing of a condensed populated area? I guess that's a philosophical question at this point. But in any event, that was a really interesting conversation. I really appreciate the time. And we will see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.